appeared on Brad Polumbo's channel to debate a MAGA guy named Tyler O'Neill. You can see this is his account. I'll show you some clips from it. We debated both, and for context, Brad Polumbo's sort of center right, but he'll call balls and strikes on a lot of things. He's not super partisan in either direction. And so he was the moderator, and then Tyler O'Neill's more partisan, and I debated him on the subject of Don Lemon's arrest, what this indicates about Trump's lack of respect for the First Amendment, and then something that I haven't gotten to debate publicly too frequently, but was really fun to do here, was gay marriage. Tyler O'Neill, who's the senior editor for the Daily Signal, he is very anti-gay marriage, and he's supporting a campaign to try to overturn Obergefell. And so you can see there, he says he's a senior editor, Daily Signal, author, Making Hate Pay, and the Woketopus. Fun! Isn't it gonna be fun? The Woketopus. Okay, and one thing that cracked me up, the second part of our analysis of this debate will be about the gay marriage issue, so do wait for that throughout this segment. For that, he broke this up into two videos. I was described as gay liberal. Just very simply, gay liberal versus Christian conservative. Okay, I see you, Brad. I feel reduced, but nevertheless, let's jump in on what we talked about with Don Lemon's insane arrest by the Trump DOJ. Here it is.
To be prosecuted under them, in your view?
Yeah, from my reading, I think the indictment is rather clear. Don Lemon did conspire with, or at least he's accused of conspiring with, the agitators who carried out this church invasion. So there are three main claims here that the indictment makes against Don Lemon.
So this is Tyler, and he's trying his best. I even say it at some point. He's trying his best to defend Trump being a lunatic. And he'll say it in like nice, flowery language, but I don't think it really holds up to the video that we have of the event.
First, he conspired ahead of time, and then, as we saw in his live stream, he withheld certain information, saying he doesn't want to give away where this action is going to take place. That, many people think, and I'm among them, differentiates him from being a reporter just saying what was happening and making him more of an activist involved in the action itself. Furthermore, you see during the actual activity, yes, he is not chanting ICE out. He is not chanting things like "we shut this down" like the other people there were chanting, which I think is very revealing. But he did physically get in front of the pastor, and it was him and two others who were kind of flanking the pastor and forcing the pastor back.
So remember, before I play more of this, and I will jump in to analyze, you got to do that. You got to transform the clips if you're going to play someone else's content. And so to start with, if you don't know the context of this, the reason the Trump DOJ is saying Don Lemon was arrested is because he impeded worshipers' ability to worship by, quote unquote, participating in an obstructive protest inside of a church during a church service. We watched the video many times. You can find those segments. He's covering the protest as a journalist. So to go after him is insane. And then to pretend like this was as insane of an act as MAGA is pretending makes me not take you very seriously. People walked into a church that was unlocked, chanted, made noise because one of the pastors worked for ICE, and that did obstruct the service. If you have law on the books, you have law on the books. But for certain, to say Don Lemon and others who were arrested for doing journalism, filming and interviewing people should be put in jail or should be prosecuted means you don't care much about the First Amendment.
And according to the indictment, what you see him doing is getting very physically up in front of the pastor. And then when the pastor, kind of tries to back away, Don Lemon acts as though the pastor is pushing him. Meanwhile, Don Lemon, the pastor asked Don Lemon to leave.
Okay, so we get his point. Let's see when a man by the name of me gets to talk. Let's go.
And I think they have not gotten the sort of condemnation that they deserve.
All right, Luke, I want to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, this topic is pretty easy for me because, like, Tyler, I thought you did a good job of trying best you could in the least embarrassing way possible to explain why this makes any sense. when in my case, I don't have to do much arguing because we have the video of it. And I think any rational adult can watch Don Lemon walking in very peacefully and interviewing people and covering. And I also know that if it were Nick Shirley going, guys, I got an advance tip that there were going to be left-wing agitators in this church. And so I walked in and I asked the pastor what he thinks about it. And I filmed the protesters. No one would have a problem with it. And no one would think it was anything other than journalism. This was obviously him reporting on a notable event. And the broader event, even if you can find technical laws that were violated, any rational adult goes, really? They're reacting this strongly to people walking into a church and speaking loudly. This is from the same people who are happy that Trump pardoned people who violated the FACE Act and previously were acting like the FACE Act was unconstitutional and it was an outrage that under the Biden administration anyone would be prosecuted under that. And obviously I will bring it up ultimately just because I know it's an important principle and I think it fleshes out consistency. But if, I don't know where Tyler stands on this, but if he's not 10 gazillion times outraged by Trump pardoning January 6ers, even the violent ones, then I have zero interest in what he has to say on this because obviously it's not consistent. And pretending like that was an appropriate protest at the Capitol trying to block the certification election, but then thinking this was like the worst thing since who knows when is completely ridiculous. And again, we're not even talking about, as Brad referenced, the broader protests, which I guess you could have more to say about, even though I still think the reaction from the right has been a little bit silly. But definitely Don Lemon going in there. If you watch that video and you see him, what was the word you used, as an invader who's trying to prevent people from worshiping as opposed to capturing on video and interviewing people about a protest that was going on and them speaking loudly near other people in a church, then I think that you're purposefully distorting what actually happened.
Okay, just real quick. Say what you will about Tyler O'Neill. Say what you will. I have to respect his eyebrow game. I was almost getting distracted during the debate at how those eyebrows were a-moving. It was almost an eyebrow gyrate. There was some shaking and some moving. Look at this. Ready?
Other people in a church, then I think that you're purposefully...
Yes, I love that. And I'm not even sarcastic. I do love when people are able to, without interrupting, say a lot with their face. I do think there's something fun about that, because then you get to tell the audience what you think of what the person's saying without having to jump in and interrupt. These were put on Brad Polumbo highlights. If you look at Polumbo highlights, you'll be able to find the full thing. I do encourage you to go watch the full debate after we review some of these clips. Let's jump in here on the same topic. Again, we're building to what I thought was the most fun topic to debate, which is Tyler O'Neill trying to overturn same-sex marriage, marriage equality, and obviously me advocating for marriage equality.
Okay, Tyler, your response to that.
Yeah, so when you watch, I mean, this is not people just standing there talking. This is people who are bragging about shutting down a church service. I mean, it's in their own words where they're saying, who shut this down? We shut this down.
Don Lemon was chanting that?
No, I'm not claiming Don Lemon was. Well, so you drew
Don
the claim.
Lemon was filming the event, as you know, and you watched the video, and he wasn't doing anything that you could portray as illegal. So then you're just trying to justify what is Trump's whole goal here, which is punishing people he doesn't like,
and preventing the pastor from giving his sermon during the time when the pastor was set to be giving the sermon.
You watched a different video.
I mean, the video is very clear what he was doing at that point. He is going up in front of the pastor who's trying to give a sermon, and the pastor tells him directly.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
The pastor tells him directly, we want you to leave because we're trying to worship God. And he essentially says, oh, I'm always worshiping God. And then while he's constantly asking him, no, I mean this, but this is the thing, right? They didn't go outside the church and post their picket signs.
Talk about Don, please.
Well, yeah, Don didn't either. Don went in with everybody. He knew what was happening, and he chose to enter that church.
So I think that I think you get his point. I'm trying to give him enough time to talk without just playing the entire debate. But I think that they're watching a different video, or as I said before, it's like if it were Nick Shirley, if it were Jesse Waters or a Fox News producer going, one of the protesters told me they're about to go into the church, so I'm going to go in and film it and interview the pastor about how he feels about it. There'd be no world where the Trump DOJ is saying we're arresting that journalist. Zero. And it's funny because you notice in this debate, I might be willing even to debate the broader protest, but we weren't even doing that. We were debating Don Lemon. And it kept having to go back to, they were shouting, shut this down. They were admitting they're trying to, prevent the worshiping, which violates the Faith Act. They. But that's not who we're talking about. Don Lemon wasn't doing that. And again, I'm blanking on the other names involved, but there are also at least one other journalist who's been swept up in this. And so I think that's really what demonstrates a little bit of weakness in his argument about the First Amendment issue and the targeting of a journalist issue, which it's because of who he is and because he happens to be more liberal, but he wasn't there as a liberal. He was there as a journalist covering it. And then I can't tell if the clips I grabbed has this moment. I hope it does. But at one point, Tyler O'Neill says that Don Lemon was number one, he used the word invading the church, which is a funny way to describe walking into a church that's open during a service. But then he was using this really aggressive terminology for how he walked up to interview the pastor as if he was like charging him.
I think those cases are different, but I don't defend the pardons of January 6th.
That's good.
Okay.
I would not call them protesters, especially not when you're invading the Capitol like that. Now, there are questions I will mention about why I've tried to get into the Capitol, like I've walked around the Capitol, and just of no intent of doing anything wrong. Capitol Police will block you from even setting foot on one step of the Capitol. And that raises a lot of questions to me as to how these people were able to fully get in there.
No,
but
it doesn't.
Once you go into the Capitol, and once you're removing material.
So this is funny. A lot of even the conservatives like him who are willing to admit that Trump should not have pardoned January 6ers. Thus, he takes away some of the hypocrisy of pretending like he cares about this, but then justifies January 6th. But then they always still kind of try. So even the ones who admit it's wrong still have to add a caveat of, but something was suspicious about how this all happened, which they're trying to allude to. Maybe there was something to do with law enforcement scheming to frame, like that's what they're alluding to. And it almost bothers me more, as opposed to the people who just really seem brainwashed out of their mind. The ones who know it's wrong, but still try to throw a little bit of red meat to the followers.
From Nancy Pelosi's office, and once you're doing this sort of thing, that is utterly unacceptable. And
sure, Luke, a brief word on this, and then I do have a follow-up question for you about it.
Yeah, I know we're not trying to shift into a whole January 6th debate, and I do appreciate that you're willing to say that Trump was wrong on that, and it kind of diminishes any argument he can ever have about back in the blue or being against violence whenever, if you do it on his behalf.
That's not what I said.
He'll pardon you. Oh, no. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going all the way in the moral direction. Whoops. But with how did they get in? If you're not expecting that a mob of people, because the president, said patriotically among a bunch of other provocative statements, send you down to the Capitol, and then there's way too many people for the Capitol Police resources to deal with, then them backing away, as you made it sound like I've tried to walk into the Capitol before and the Capitol Police stopped me, because it was you walking in and not bashing their faces in and breaking windows. So it's not like a strange mystery as to how people got in the Capitol. We watched them get in the Capitol violently. And the reason that sometimes the Capitol Police backed off was because when it's 1v300, then you're probably going to have to back away at some point.
So I don't want to relitigate all this, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
So classic. If someone feels like they're maybe losing an argument, but I don't want to put in win-lose. We're just expressing our different stances. But if someone does feel cornered, maybe we'll say, in a debate context, get ready for the whataboutism, okay? Because, and it's not wrong to check people's consistency, but anytime you're talking about January 6th, they're going to bring up BLM protests and Antifa. Let's see.
I do condemn violent Antifa.
I think all the violent riots in 2020?
During BLM, yes, 100%. Again, I'm consistent. I'm not a partisan hack.
Appreciate both of that from
Whoops. So it's like, even if people who agree more with my worldview do violence as a form of protest, I'm against it. And the way he asks it makes him think he's about to corner me. It's like, nope, denounce. And then he sort of, whoa, what? which then makes me sad about how many people choose partisanship over principle. Because if you're standing on business, no, if you're standing on principle, then wait, can we get it? Let's get it.
It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business, is it?
That's essentially what I was trying to say to him. In debate, you never really have to squirm around in debates because you just say what's actually true. Like, you don't have to just go, wait, how do I fit into my partisan mold if you're not choosing that? And instead you're choosing principle. All right, one other clip on this topic, then we'll get to the gay marriage.
Don't do your job and you'll just recycle press releases. But look, more broadly on free speech, your thoughts on Trump living up to those bold promises or maybe not so much.
Yeah, okay, let me just quickly demonstrate something, Tyler. Imagine that Brad brought up a clip of some Democrat being like, Joe Biden is the most mentally fit that he's ever been, and he's just sharp as a tack, and nothing has changed in the last decade. And I responded with, yeah, well, there's different ideas on this subject, and people debate it, and maybe some people have a point, but like, I think that's generally correct. You'd be like, that's so ridiculous. Like, just be honest. I think even if you like Trump, you can't say you like him or you believe.
And that was me mimicking what he was doing with Trump, which was, yeah, so, okay, he did go after this journalist. He did do this thing. Oh, he did violate the First Amendment this way. But like, there's different arguments on it. And I actually think in a general, it's so obvious what he actually believes versus what he's trying to say to still support Trump.
Within the context of liking him, that he's been strong on the First Amendment. He's been going berserk. He admits that. He will say, aside from what his administration does, he will say, like I said, I want Pam Bondi to bring RICO cases against those pink whatever protesters who said I was Hitler. Insane. Or the government, this is a quote, should come down hard on MSNBC. And then he started doing that, right? He brings these ridiculous lawsuits against CBS, for example, while they're trying to get a merger to go through. He's withholding the merger, preventing them from making a bunch of money to force them, threatening them into settling with him and paying him off a bribe. He's like open, and you have to do me favors, and you can't cross me too much, otherwise I'm going to sue you. The New York Times, he's done that as well, and then leverages his government power to punish you until you go ahead and pay him through a settlement. What I see is essentially a bribe. Even in the cases of the lies that were told in the aftermath of the ICE shootings, you have these people exercising their First Amendment, and then they get killed, and then the Trump administration comes out and lies about that. That one has to do with the First Amendment and what y'all previously cared about, which was the Second Amendment in the case of Alex Preddy. You have like Miles Taylor being investigated for a book he wrote that Trump didn't like. Obviously, the whole James Comey case and them shopping around to different prosecutors and firing people if they won't bring a case, proving that it's a weak and flimsy case, has nothing to do with them really being concerned that Comey lied, that a leak that actually was beneficial to Trump's campaign happened under his watch at the FBI.
So, look,
that's obviously last thing because he doesn't like what Comey said about him. So these are his
part of the First Amendment allows you to block ICE from carrying out deportations.
That's not what I said.
Part of the First
Alex
Amendment
Preddy was not blocking them from. Did you see him like waving people along? Here, come by. He was just shouting.
You said Alex Preddy and Renee Good. Yeah, and
Renee Good also ushered a
Renee
car
Good,
through.
whose car just hit an ICE officer before he opened fire.
I gave you a bunch of examples. I zeroed in on the First Amendment example, saying that sometimes you could find there was obstruction going on in the ICE protests, but that the willingness, even in cases where they were abiding by the law while they were protesting that spiraled into even death scenarios, and the willingness to lie about that is an example of them not caring about people's ability to protest. Yes, some of them get chaotic, and sometimes people do things that I don't support during protests, but then what about like the rest of the list that I did?
Well, so
just be honest. Go, that's bad. Why is he doing that?
What?
You did throw out a lot there, though, Luke, like a million
This is all
things.
in the context.
Well, I think that says something.
Let me return what you said.
That is funny to go, hey. You said a lot of ways Trump was violating the First Amendment. Don't expect him to contend with one of them. It's like, no, exactly. That long list is proof of my point. And then he tries to get down in the weeds on like, was someone obstructing before an unjustified killing? He's like, okay, if you need the perfect only attack on the First Amendment with no other surrounding factors, hey, here's the rest of the list if you'd like to engage with it. But he doesn't want to. Let's keep listening.
Luke Beasley, what you said about
own
January 6th, when you said that you wanted things to be aggressively prosecuted because, and I agree with you, January 6th was an egregious situation. Do you think that people should be aggressively prosecuted when they invade a church in the middle of service? When people are trying to worship God? I mean, the First Amendment, which also protects religious freedom, the free exercise of religion.
Was that rhetorical? Yeah. So if there was a story of people beating police officers to get into a church, kicking through the windows, climbing into the church, and then chanting that they wanted to hang the pastor, I do think an example should have been made out of those people as well.
You don't think that interrupting
Stop using the word
middle
invaded.
of service?
They walked into an unlocked door. Like, okay,
Well,
the law was broken.
Okay, so you get the point. I think you get both of our stances there. But notice, I don't even know if he was very aware of some of the things I listed with the First Amendment violations, even ones Brad brought up, not in the clips that I showed you, but at a different point. And then just brings it back to January 6th. And it's like, well, if you think an example should have been made out of the January 6ers because you want to really discourage in a functioning democratic republic people trying to violently obstruct elections from being certified, if you think an example should have been made out of them, which I said previously in the debate, and I obviously stand by, then don't you think an example should be made out of people who shouted in a church? What? What's the through line there? So then I laid out, if the same thing happened at a church that happened on January 6th, number one, actually, as much as I want people's ability to worship to be protected, you also still wouldn't have the angle of protecting our entire system of government, which is why the prosecution on January 6th was so important, to discourage that anti-democratic behavior. But yeah, I would also be horrifically outraged if people violently attacked a church. Yeah, that's not what happened here. So I don't even understand what that comparison was. Very strange. Now we get to the topic of gay marriage. And to discuss that topic, they brought on an expert, a gay liberal. Okay? They got an expert. As it describes in the thumbnail. And then a Christian conservative as he is described. And what you're going to see in this first clip is the video that Tyler O'Neill was promoting from this organization that's trying to overturn marriage equality, that makes the whole argument about marriage equality is bad for children. And that is what you're going to see get thoroughly debunked later in the debate. But here's the video that Tyler O'Neill sort of is debating on.
From their launch video.
We now have these trite phrases like love makes a family, or all you need is just love. As long as your physical needs are met and someone is cheering you on, then apparently you'll grow up fine.
But the kids aren't fine. The kids haven't been fine for quite some time.
You redefine marriage, you have just destroyed the house. You can put together a new house and claim it's the same. Children will know the difference. It harms children in virtually every way imaginable.
We're prioritizing the fantasies of adults, no matter how earnestly those fantasies are felt, over the real needs and the real good of children.
Redefining marriage robs children of the natural right to their mother and father.
And it puts adult desires over children's needs. It has to stop. Children
Children are greater.
Children
Are greater
Children are greater
than equal.
And it's time.
So children are greater than equal. Okay? So what's the argument there? The argument's pretty clear, which is that they are asserting that allowing same-sex couples to get married harms children. That's the argument. So you would think if you were making that argument, you'd have some damn strong evidence before you swing that around. But what fascinated me was something I've already researched plenty in the past, and as I was refreshing myself on the data, it is the exact opposite. Marriage equality is good for children. Repealing it would be bad for millions of children. And I'll lay that out. But I was so confused by how Tyler didn't have even any contradictory data or research or even just logic that he could explain as to how in some way, this hasn't shown up in any particular analysis, but I think it could be bad because of blank. He didn't even have that. He would just go back to, I think that a man and a woman. Well, the man and the women still have the babies in the marriage. That's not being taken away. Do you there has to be one conservative that hears same-sex marriage or marriage equality and thinks it means that only gay marriages are allowed or something, because the way they talk about it acts as if it's to the detriment of opposite sex couples, which it's not. And so what's so interesting is the strongest argument for marriage equality is that it strengthens families that would already exist, but it provides legal protections. It provides benefits. It provides stability. And so for that to be the case, just based on empirical data, and for them to try to leverage the same issue being children is so dishonest. And you'll see Tyler doesn't really have a way to defend his stance. Let's listen.
Just a quick point of clarification, Tyler, because I'm not as interested in, based on the video I saw that you posted, debating whether or not a strong legal challenge could be brought. It's like, that'll be litigated, we'll see. But aren't we more discussing the principle of it? Like, you're not saying you would support enshrining gay marriage through a different legal means, and you just believe the way it was ruled on was not constitutional. You don't want gay marriage, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so then let's litigate that, because the video just acts
It doesn't talk about legal arguments. It talks about kids.
It talks about kids, and it acts like we all just know that the data points towards children do worse in same-sex households. And if you're going to try to argue that, you're going to get bodied, Tyler, because the body of, oh my gosh, I sound so like Newsom right now, of medical and scientific research.
You're going to get bodied because the body of evidence is something nobody can dispute. Okay, buddy? I started doing that Newsom, like, reusing a word over and over thing on accident. Watch that one more time.
And if you're going to try to argue that, you're going to get bodied, Tyler, because the body of, oh my gosh, I sound so like Newsom right now, of medical and scientific research points to the exact opposite conclusion. And I can go through some of that if you want. I don't know how much time I have. I have a bunch of different references that we can go through if you're interested. But the real, like, if you zoom out, the real argument here is, as Brad said, no matter what you do, you're not changing the fact that already like 2 to 3 million kids are in same-sex households, that same-sex couples are going to have kids through all sorts of different means. Even if it's they bring a kid into a marriage that was from a previous heterosexual relationship, it's a fact of our world that same-sex couples are going to be couples, and then some of them are going to have kids. And so if the whole argument is we want to do what's best for the children, then I can tell you, your activism only has a chance at removing the marriage component, which just means you're trying to make life worse for the children who would already be in same-sex homes. And that's what we see when you remove those legal protections, as referenced by Brad, the different benefits that come with marriage and the stability and the likelihood of couples staying together and building a more stable long-term family. If you remove that, the kids still exist, the couples still exist, but the well-being of the children just gets worse. So it's
Tyler,
like, wait,
yeah, so
why
I'll
are you
put a
citing
question
children?
to you, and we're not going to yell at you, not going to call you names.
Okay, let's see. I don't want to just play me. That'd be awkward. Maybe Brad talks or Tyler talks here. But remember to click the subscribe button. That's really important. Jade's give me the cue. Click the subscribe button. Click the like button. Thank you so much. I am going to read comments. I know this is a long segment. I will get back to reading comments and thanking people for becoming members. But that's the big argument, just so you know. If they're trying to cite children, I'll go through in a little bit here the massive batch of research that contradicts the idea that kids are worse off in same-sex homes. And once you realize that, then you say, okay, what would removing gay couples' ability to get married do then? It would not change any of the facts on the ground other than less stability, less legal protections, as I'll cite specifics on at some point in this. And one example that I'm sure I'm going to go through is after marriage equality, child poverty in same-sex homes declined. So it's like an example of you give more financial stability and all these different forms of, I come back to that word, foundational stability that you would be removing. But then that's all you're doing. You're just making it worse for the children in same-sex homes. It's crazy that he would go into a debate not knowing some of those figures. Let's keep listening.
But Luke, first, just your thoughts.
Okay, again, I'm not trying to be mean, but that was a crazy, crazy word salad, and you didn't address at all what I just explained, which is...
Okay, well, to be fair to him, take that down, Jaden. Let's see if we can get a little bit of his take so you can hear what I'm responding to.
Names. I genuinely want to earnest dialogue about this.
No, you guys have been... Yeah.
My main question is, shouldn't they just be honest? Because it sounds to me like basically everyone in that video wants to ban gay people from having kids, right? Wants to make it illegal for gay people to adopt, probably make surrogacy illegal, probably make sperm donation illegal. That at least should be, if what they believe, what they're saying in the video, that should be what they're calling for. Do you understand why it's strange to me that they're conflating this with the marriage question?
Well, so to some degree, I understand why you think that's strange. Marriage as an institution historically has been about procreation. And that's one of the main reasons why the government recognizes marriage in the first place. So this whole debate does involve the children. So the questions of whether kids do best in which circumstances. So they were saying, and I think the data generally stands, that kids do best in when they're raised with their biological mother and their biological father. But that does not mean that there aren't confounding variables. That does not mean that kids who are in same...
So now you get what I'm about to call a word salad. It's just a bunch of and parent and father and dad and yeah. So then here's me.
Your thoughts?
Okay, again, I'm not trying to be mean, but that was a crazy, crazy word salad, and you didn't address at all what I just explained, which is, if all that video talked about was children, we have to put children over equal. But if you don't prioritize equal, in this case, with what we're talking about with gay marriage, you're doing what's worse for the children. Let me go just really quickly. All the following organizations agree that children by same-sex parents do just as well, and as Brad referenced in some studies, better for different reasons, than those raised by opposite-sex parents. The American Academy of Pediatrics, American Psychological Association, American Medical Association, American Sociological Association. That's based on decades of peer-reviewed research. The few studies that contradict that have wild methodological issues, and this is measuring emotional health, academic performance, behavioral issues, substance abuse, delinquency, social development. What does matter? So those all things stay the same based on same-sex versus opposite sex. What does matter is not the sexual orientation of the parents, but the parental stability, economic stability, low conflict at home, access to legal protections. And you can hear as I'm listing those, marriage, allowing couples that would already exist with kids who would already exist to get married, just enshrines more of those factors that improve the well-being of the children. That's what the research actually demonstrates. An example of this is that child poverty among kids in same-sex households declined after marriage equality became a reality. So just try to engage with that as opposed to just a bunch of language about a mom and a dad. Yeah, we love the moms and the dads with families. And also, there's other families that you would just be worsening the conditions for the kids if you removed their parents' ability to be married, because of if one parent dies and the other one's not technically a legal parent and they're not married, then all of a sudden you have this instability for the kid, or the ability for the insurance of the employer of a parent to be used for the child, the financial stability that comes with marriage. All those things you would be wanting to remove, not to mention the more societal dedication.
Let's give Tyler a response.
Not to mention the societal dedication that marriage represents that causes people to stay together longer, which is good for the kids. So engage with that, please.
Well, you said their parents, and I think that is fundamentally the issue here, is when we're talking about same-sex couples and adopting. Now, some kids may be better off being adopted by a same-sex couple than being in an orphanage when their situations are worse otherwise. But we're talking, children come from a mother and a father. And there are some technologies that they've developed that have a lot of moral complications. I mean, do you know the surrogacy issue, the issue of how many embryos they make with IVF. Like there are a lot of concerns that people have, and I think they're legitimate moral concerns.
But that's not just gay people. That's vastly also done by heterosexual people.
Yes, as we've established here, this campaign is not just about overturning same-sex marriage in Obergefell. It's about trying to get to a place where children are given their right to be raised by their biological mother and their biological father is paramount. And that is the foundation of family law.
You posted
That's
this
what
just
these
real
people
quick.
are going
A
for.
broad coalition of pro-family groups is organizing to overturn Obergefell. You just said it's not about overturning Obergefell.
It's not just about overturning Obergefell. If you look at the website, yeah. Well,
but that is definitely the focus.
Okay, so you see, is this as irritating to watch as for me as it is for y'all? What are you saying, Tyler? What you saying? He says it's not about Obergefell, and then later he says just about Obergefell. It's like, okay, well the post says it's about overturning about, and if that's what you are advocating for, people don't understand this sometimes. Then you have to be able to argue that. I don't care that you know English and you speak a bunch of words in a row. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. You need to engage with what it is that you posted. I didn't post about it. You posted that you're supporting a campaign to overturn marriage equality. Why? Because it's better for the children. I just showed you a bunch of data. Not better for the children. Worse for the children. And then to be like, well, all we're saying is in general, I don't know anything about the policy of it, actually. I don't know. But I'm just saying we got to get back to when men and women were parents. But first of all, that's not men and women get humping and have kids. I don't know. Do it. Okay. That's a separate issue from the couples and families that will already exist in same-sex homes. Now, to Brad's point, if what you're saying, if what you really don't want to admit is that you want to figure out how to, strip away the millions of kids already in same-sex homes, then ban any surrogacy just for gay people maybe, but also maybe for straight couples who have fertility issues or something, and you're going to shut down all the IVF clinics, and you're going to ban gay adoption, and you're going to let certain kids never have a home they could have otherwise had that data proves is just as good for their outcomes as an opposite-sex home because of your random feeling on this that's not attached to the facts at all. Is that really what you're saying? Because right now you're just advocating for the overturning of marriage equality, which I just explained would have bad consequences, and completely removing same-sex couples' ability to have kids would have bad consequences. And that's why caring a little bit about the empirical figures on this is important, because it's not like it's something that hasn't ever been looked into. We know. Children do just as well in same-sex homes. And then Brad brings up a good example, I think it's here, of a friend of his who is a product of a sperm donor. So female parents and a sperm donor. And his point is like, you're acting as if a kid's being taken away from a happy, healthy, opposite sex family and then put into a same-sex family. But many of the kids we're talking about just wouldn't exist, it sounds like, in your ideal world. You just wouldn't want them to exist.
Data that were not accurate, and they're slowly walking back, and we've seen challenged. I mean, look, we can't just blindly trust the experts, right? The argument I think we've seen through COVID and then through some of the gender stuff Tyler mentions, the analysis doesn't just stop with what the American Medical Association says.
Yeah, I'd rather trust the experts than Tyler, but I agree. That's why
he went there. Bodied. You need an ice pack because you just got burned.
Says.
Yeah, I'd rather trust the experts than Tyler, but I agree. That's why I was trying to explain that you can also look at the studies and how they conducted it and interact with the data yourself, which you can also do with trans-related studies, which is what people...
Okay, so then this is not the clip I was thinking of, but then I go on to explain, you don't have to blindly trust the experts to engage with the research. And hey, do you have any counter research? No. and the ones you do, I could explain to you why they're so methodologically whacked, then I think this is when Brad asked the question about his friend who's a product of two moms who got a sperm donor.
To some extent, but feel free to draw a distinction if it's there, is that they did something wrong by using a sperm donor and bringing in a child not to be into the world, not to be raised by its biological mother and biological father. When you say things like all children have a natural right to be raised by their biological mother and father, I mean, I think the world is better off because my friend exists and her parents had a family. But do you also, what would you say that that coalition would say as well?
Well, so I think every person is made in the image of God, and there is no person that I would say you shouldn't exist. I lament the death of every person, and I lament the death of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and I don't think that your inherent moral dignity as a human being is reliant on the circumstances of your conception. But I do think that when we're looking at the way that society...
So what is he saying? He might as well have sung, I don't want to be a chicken, I don't want to be a duck, I don't want to be... That meant nothing. Yeah, you hate loss of life and you love life. That wasn't the question. In your ideal world, it sounds like you don't want his friend to ever have been born. Say it. Say it, Tyler.
That when we're looking at the way that society is organized, I support the idea that marriage between a man and a woman should be the bedrock of our society.
No, we heard that, but why? It is, too. Almost all the marriages are between men and women. Whoa. Why we trigger you so much? Just try to have our life.
Not mean that I think she shouldn't exist. That doesn't mean, I think we need to work these things out. No, it doesn't.
It does. If you're saying in the ideal world you would cut down on those type. I mean, you're not saying that she specifically, now that she already does exist, should die, but you do think in the future there should be less of hers.
I mean, maybe put it this way. Put it this way, Tyler, as a yes or no.
Enough.
Sorry, Luke, but as a yes or no, did they do something immoral by creating her with a sperm donor? Yes or no, Tyler?
I mean, I think
you can say yes. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to call you any names. I promise. I at least would say that I think the majority of the people in this coalition would say yes. I think.
Yeah, I think
he eventually goes on to say yes. Gosh, he eventually says yes. He thinks it's immoral. So, that's cray, huh? And again, it would be different if they're like, we have these decades of research suggesting that kids just have terrible outcomes in same-sex homes. But it's the opposite. So then what are you doing? And then they're like, well, my religious view says it's only between a man and a woman. Hey, cool. Go to your church. Sorry, we're talking about the government. Go to your church. In all honesty, homophobe your way till on Sunday. Homophobe every day till Sunday. I don't care. Just stop bothering me about it. And then we're talking about a government, a secular government that created an institution of marriage as well. So in churches, you're not forced. I'm going to make this point in a second. You're not forced to do a gay marriage. I don't know why you wouldn't. They're hella chic. But you're not being forced. So if it's your religious view that's man and woman, cool. But you don't have any data to back up better outcomes. If you think it's God's intention, okay, that's your religion. Go do your religion in your religion place, sir.
I believe, but that's your belief. Luke, final word to you on this topic. And I apologize for taking moderator's prerogative here a little bit, but...
No, it's okay. So yeah, that's unfortunate. And it's funny because you can tell, I think, when an argument is weak, when the person, with all due respect, has to kind of fall back on like nice sounding phrases, but can't really engage in the specifics or the real world consequences of their ideology. So just sort of like, I believe as a man and a woman, something. And it's like none of, at least I can't speak for every random activist out there, but none of my ideology, and I know Brad's, is attempting to take away from straight couples and their ability to build a wonderful family. And one of the things you said interested me because you made it sound like in the marriage equality world, you're looked down upon if you have your view on marriage. And it's like, first of all, what percent? I looked it up and it was like anywhere from 89 to 99% of marriages in the United States are straight couples. So it's like, that is still, to your point, like the primary instance of marriage. And then churches aren't required to even honor and conduct gay marriages. So then your feeling of like, but we can't have our view. Yeah, you can. And then we just have ours and then everyone is happy. Yay.
All right, Tyler, brief response to you, then we'll wrap up here.
The main point is not that it's not this big divide between, yes, there are more straight marriages than there are gay marriages. But when you're talking about the stance that marriage is between a man and a woman, this conservative Christian, Jewish, Muslim stance, that is being demonized in the culture. And that's what I'm talking about. That's where you have groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center that essentially exist. They raise all their money by comparing people who hold this position to the Klan. And that's real.
Whatever.
And all right, guys.
No.
I mean, it's very interesting how you have all this fun talk that my arguments are weak, but then you're like, oh yeah.
That argument didn't. That's because it was such a random side point. If you feel like people are being mean to you, I'm sorry. Guess what? You want to hear the things people say about gay marriages? They're also really mean about them coming in the other direction. I want everyone to stop being mean, including liberals to conservatives. But I also want, based on data, to create the best society for everyone, for people who have straight marriages, who think it should only be that way. I want them to have the best life and I want their family to be great. And then I also want, which we see in the research, for families relating to same-sex couples to have the best outcomes for their children. I want what they pretend like they want in that video. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm done.
All right, guys.
Yeah, that's a funny argument to be thinking. We have to overturn Obergefell because libs are mean to us if we don't support marriage equality. Well, you want to see my DMs? It's like, what? Your ideology is informed by how mean people are to you who disagree with you? That's life, brother. And trust me, the people who don't like gay marriage, who see thumbnails with the gay liberal and want to go contact him in an aggressive way, not very nice. Not very nice. But that doesn't make me want to revoke opposite sex marriage. Luke Beasley for president, only gay marriage. So I don't really know. Tyler, that's, again, I say it with love. You failed to make your argument, I would say. And it's funny because you're associating with a group that has this as their mission and a swanky video with cool music. You'd think they have thought about it, but all they can conjure up is, I personally believe this despite the data. And you're like, okay, then go personally believe that. But you aren't making a very strong argument to convince the rest of us.